Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS and AI CEOs and go-to-market leaders accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Mark Walker, CEO at New.io, a revenue lifecycle platform that integrates CPQ, billing, and analytics for every revenue and GTM model in a single platform. Hey, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ken. Nice to have you here.
I'm really excited to record your episode, but before we jump into it, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
I'm not the founder of New. I had the privilege to join really early in its evolution. New was created by an incredible woman named Tina Kung. She's our founder and CTO. And the vision for New is really, really super simple. As the pace of change of business goes up, and obviously in the AI era, it's going up very, very quickly, you need to have less complexity in the system, single systems that are more powerful. And so she had this vision to bring together the coding systems and the self-service systems and the billing systems into one continuous system. And that has turned out to be a very prescient decision. She was a very wise and far-thinking person, and it's led us to have a massive footprint in AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I've always had a pretty deep interest in pricing in the software space. And it makes a lot of sense that you'd want to have the front end of that, like where it meets the market, be integrated with the billing system, and also being able to get some deep insight as a result. So seems like she was on to something when she did that.
Yeah, I think the really brilliant thing she did is not compromise on any of those parts. So even though New is, if you think of it like the next generation of Salesforce CPQ, and then the next generation of Zora, and then the next generation of, I'm not sure what the generation of self-service that you'd be replacing would be, and agentic, right? And agentic at a world-class level. Each of those pieces is actually not only available by itself, but actually purchased by itself, which is really kind of extraordinary as a young software company, that each of the parts is world-class.
I want to start with the CPQ element of it, because that's, I guess, an entry point or a logical starting place. And from what I've learned, it's been a real difference maker for your customers. A lot of flexibility and power in that part of the platform. Can you just tell us what's unique about it and why is that resonating so strongly right now?
Three things that are unique about it. The one that is most widely known, I think, is the fact that it's used by basically everybody you've ever heard of in AI. So not obviously not everybody, but OpenAI, Anthropic, Glean, Jasper, Legora, Sierra, Cursor. I'm definitely leaving some amazing companies out. And the reason why they all adopted the same system is because of two different things. One is speed. Speed is the ultimate feature now, and the fact that it can be implemented really, really quickly. So we'll talk more about why that is in a second. But the second one is that it handles the new emerging pricing models, the committed consumption models that people are having to deploy to enable really an uncertainty in their customer base about which of their products the customer is actually going to consume. And so the support for all these complex models and being able to make it simple to contract is the second really big thing. And the third one, frankly, is that literally none of our customers need an ongoing consultant to run it. So it's also beautifully easy to own. And that's pretty amazing since some of our customers are multi-billion-dollar companies. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the strongest objection I hear across category in any software is if I need an army of consultants to make it run, I probably don't want it anymore. It's like unnecessary overhead given other choices they might have. Is that part of it really strong in terms of your acceptance? I mean, you mentioned it, but I'm just wondering how important that really is.
yeah, I mean, so I think there's a couple of different things. Definitely. So OpenAI went live in 8 weeks, multi-billion dollars, multi-currency, multi-jurisdiction, multi-sales teams, multi-verticals, multi-product lines in 8 weeks. That says a lot more about OpenAI and their execution culture. But Anthropic went live in 12, right? Which is 50% slower. But again, they're a different business, but that's still incredibly fast, right? And Chili Piper, very fast. So this speed of execution is because we didn't just it's not because the software is simple. The software is actually incredibly powerful, but we basically hid the complexity in an interface that was designed for the owner, for the administrator, for the person who owned it. So they don't have to deal with the complexity of the model. They just deal with the quite straightforward configuration of what the outcome is. And so a lot of people pay a lot of attention to the user experience for the end user. We did that for sure. It looks like, somebody was describing it as Salesforce the way you wish it was, or NetSuite redesigned by HubSpot, right? Something like that. But we also did the same thing. Part of Tina's vision was to do the same thing for the administration experience. And what that does, it lowers the gap or removes the gap between ideation and thinking about what you want to do and doing it, which is actually where problems really come up in the deployment of CPQ. The person who knows how to configure it doesn't know what they want to do, and the person who knows what they want to do doesn't know how to configure it. Well, that's not a problem in it.
It's really interesting. We had Brent Adamson on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he was the co-author of the Challenger Sale and the Challenger Customer, and he now has a new book. It's, I think, called Frame Making, and it's about the no decision part of selling. And a big part of no decision, according to his research, is that customers lack confidence in two areas: one, that they can make a good decision, and number two, that they can implement what it is they've decided upon. So if you can take away one of those two big lacking of confidence situations, you can make your own revenue accelerate even faster. That's really interesting.
Yeah, the interesting thing we're seeing in the marketplace that relates to that is no decision is kind of not on the table now, right? Like, there's no decision is deciding to fail, because for sure, 100% of the existing systems do not support the new emerging pricing models. Like, that's definitely true. You might be able to customize a system to kind of do one version of it for a while, but that is a decision. Like, that is a decision to actually build something new. Now you're a software company with a customer base of one. And so recently in our pipeline over the past year, no decision has basically just disappeared. Like, everybody's making a decision. They either make a decision to move to something really, really simple because they don't think they have that problem, or they move to us, basically. And obviously there are other people who are not in our pipeline who may be making other decisions, but that's a really interesting thing, because in today's world, with the pace of change and the new emerging things, sitting on 15 to 20-year-old technology or not trying to do this with spreadsheets is really not really a realistic plan. What the customer is really trying to figure out is what is the least dangerous thing I could do? And that's this. We talk to our sales people all the time, and our company thinks about the empathy for the person who has that problem. What's the least dangerous thing I could do? And that's hard to figure out in this situation with the pace of change being so high.
The personal risk to the decision maker doesn't get enough consideration, I don't think, in enterprise sales and marketing. The people who are putting their political capital on the line to bring some new software in, they do face a risk. So interesting part of it. You mentioned new consumption models for SaaS, and really AI, I think, is really where this is happening the most. Can you talk to me about the experiments people are running in pricing and what's showing promise or really interesting?
There are some overall trends that I can talk about. So let's talk about what the leading AI companies are experimenting with, and then what I would say the legacy or mature, scaled, and frankly growing SaaS companies are experimenting with. They're actually different experiments because they have different situations, right? But there's a common theme. So basically, what the challenge everybody's getting into is nobody actually knows where the value of what they're providing is going to settle in terms of a pricing model. So to give you an example, say you sold a seat-based system for resolving tickets or for selling something or whatever, seat-based system. Well, everybody already understood how that related to value, because the people who did this thing would use that your software to organize the work that they did to achieve the goal. And therefore you could actually make that decision. As you start to present or compete with, you don't have to present it, you just have to compete with someone who's offering an agentic model, in other words, where it's not connected to the seats anymore because it's not people doing stuff, or an agentic model that causes the effectiveness of people in the seats to go like way up. So you need less people, which is kind of the same thing, or that does the work itself. So actually resolves tickets by itself, or does a transaction by itself, a direct chatbot interface. Then you have to change the model. But you have to change the model whether or not you're doing that. So if your competitor changes the model, you have to change your model because you're going to have to match it unless you have market setting power, right? So what people are starting to do with the larger AI providers are are doing this, and they're not even replacing something legacy. The legacy competitor is their own next product, right? Right. So they're going to their customers and saying, "We'd like you to commit a certain amount of spend." And so these spend commitments, there's sort of three flavors of them, and the third one's the most interesting. The first one is prepaid spend. So your price is determined not by how much you use, but by how much you commit to buy. And so New can handle that from a contracting perspective. So say if you buy $10 million, I don't really care what you spend it on. I'm going to give you this price discount. If you buy $9 million, it's less. That kind of thing. Pre-build is one case. So you sign the agreement and you get a bill for $10 million. And then you can use up to the number of things that add up to $10 million. And then later you might get another bill. The second one is post-build commitments. So you sign up, commit to $10 million. You actually just you then start using it, and I don't know, use $80,000 in the first month or whatever, or 800,000 in the first month, and you get a bill for that, more the next month, more the next month. And at the end of the year, you get a bill for either the overage or the difference between your commitment. Okay, so that's the second type. The third type's the really interesting one. If you think about it, the second type introduces, actually both of the first two produce a moral hazard that you're billing the customer for something they didn't use. Now, even though that's not true because it affected the pricing and everything else, that's the way they feel about it. And so we're starting to have people wanting to have what I would call fake build commitments, where they basically are saying, we're going to bill you, but the head of revenue is like, dear God, no, don't bill them. Or the head of customer success or the chief customer officer is going, if we're in the situation where there's like a $2 million gap between what they expected to spend and what they did spend, we want to basically stop that bill from going out, right? To do that thing and frankly, you can have versions of that. You have to not only catch the contract before the bill goes out and stop the billing engine, which is much easier if the billing engine's in the CPQ, like ours is, but then you have to basically potentially change the contract backwards in time in a way that adjusts the price on everything backwards for your rev rec. It's very human, very real, and very complicated.
I mean, my mind went right to revenue recognition. It's like as a CRO, you could think you're having a great quarter only to find 3 or 4 of your large customers not utilizing their commitment, right?
Yeah, and then when you factor in the fact that the cost of compute is going through the floor, but the use cases of tokens is going, through the roof, right? So customers are really, uncertain about where their price is going to come up. So then we end up with also conditional caps, all sorts of other things that are sitting on top of these things. So even the case I gave you, even though those sounded crazy, those are the simplified cases. Now, for companies that are actually running existing SaaS companies that are trying to introduce this, they're trying to do it without cannibalizing the ARR they already have, because consumption in a pure consumption model isn't ARR, it's reoccurring revenue, not recurring revenue, right? And so they're really concerned about that. I think that distinction is going away. I think that valuations are being treating those two things the same, but they're not. What they don't want to do is all of a sudden discover that their outcome-based pricing turns out to be massively cheaper for their customer than their seat-based pricing, and all of a sudden they really did drive their revenue through the floor. So that means lots and lots and lots of experiments before you actually go to the full deployment. And the hard thing about experiments in quote to cash is you own them. Like if you decide to make your pricing model based on the number of penguins that somebody owns, you're counting penguins for at least the next 3 to 5 years. And there's no way around it. Even if only 3 people accepted that, you either got to trigger churn or somehow buy out the contract. But it's a big deal.
We could almost do maybe even beyond an episode on pricing experiments. You'd probably write a book on pricing experiments. So,
But we out of date like right away. So,
given that we only have 30 minutes, we got to move on. But
yeah.
this is one of my favorite topics. Maybe we're going to have to revisit this with you. I want to get into your coming into the company. You had done some VC backed work before at a larger scale. And so then you, as a veteran CEO, come into a seed stage startup. Like, how did that happen? And what was your experience of kind of going into that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I alluded to it. Tina built the company, Tina designed the company, and more incredibly, Tina also came up with the entire business plan of what we were going to do. And we're kind of still running Tina's plan now. Like I just get the opportunity to lead this team, but I have this partner, CTO, who my first question after she explained what she wanted to do, I said, "Sorry, why aren't you the CEO? Like you be the CEO. I'll help you. I support you. I think you're incredible." And and then she explained the product is so big and what we're doing is so audacious that she needed to focus on that and she needed a partner to focus on the business, right? So, people go, why did you join? Did you join? Like, I didn't need a job. I just sold a company at TA. We owned that thing completely. That is a good thing to happen in your life. But I was drawn to her vision, the clarity of her vision, her commitment to our customers, which continues to this day. She's like ridiculously one of the most committed people that I've ever worked with. And the opportunity to work at that level of the Esprit de Corps is, I don't know, crazy ass attractive. And then we built this team around us that's just frankly unbelievable.
How did this opportunity get to you?
One of the early investors, sort of investors who invest in this sort of situation have a certain amount of chutzpah. If you're going to go say, hey, we're going to pour millions of dollars into something before it gets to revenue, like tens of, like, we used $15 million of seed, right? And so one of them, they realized that she needed a partner and a CEO. And so they reached out to me and I said, so no, I want to go kiteboarding. And then I met Tina. And so it was actually a VC, the guy's named Robin Tiniades at Information Venture Partners, and he introduced us and I helped her for a bit. And then, it's kind of like take the puppy home for the evening. You fall in love with her vision, and that was that.
That's pretty funny. That's how I got Donna to agree to adopt our dog.
Yeah.
Fostered the dog. By day 3, she was hooked. So sounds like a good way to get yourself a
I don't
job
want to
too.
compare Tina to a dog, by the way. She's a remarkable person. I was more just thinking the company as the dog
Oh, I
rather
thought
than
you were the
Tina. Yeah,
dog. I thought
yeah.
you were the dog in this
Maybe I'm the dog.
situation.
Yeah. That's probably a better analogy. Actually, yes, I was the puppy. Yeah, yeah.
So, how did you get on this VC's radar? I think that's, there folks that haven't had their first experience being drafted. And that's almost what this is, right? You're sort of like a draft pick by this VC. How did that come about? And how does somebody become or find themselves on the radar of VCs or PE firms?
Ironically, the CEO of another CPQ company made the connection, and it was one of those things where, look, Rob's a really great investor. He's also a great person, and he basically was solving a problem for his portfolio company, and he just basically asked his network, and somebody said, "Have you ever thought of Mark Walker?" And he's a NetSuite and Salesforce, compliance public company guy. He's built companies, he's sold companies, like he would run a company for Rogers, like you know maybe Mark Walker. And so Rob reached out to me and I said no a few times. And then eventually I said yes.
I think that's a great secret, by the way, to getting the job you want. Say no at least twice. I've done
No,
that
I
a
was
couple of
literally, I
times.
was saying no because I would meant no. I was actually going, I really want to go kiteboarding. My wife didn't want me to have a job. The dog didn't want me to have a job. It was being a CEO was exhausting. Like, at least the way I do it, like I'm 100%, 150%. Or as one of our staff said recently when they were rejecting somebody, she goes, a hard no. And I said, why? She goes, I just don't think he's going to give 200%. And that's kind of the esprit de corps we have in our team. And so I was, after having sold a company and worked as hard as I did on that company, I kind of thought that maybe I'd cool my heels for a bit. So I was really saying no, not to negotiate, really saying no to say no.
Fair enough. But I want to follow up the hard work thing. You said to me in the prep, this work is too hard not to love it. So, how do you find the people that thrive on hard problems and build a resilient team?
Yeah, I mean, I think we say that around the company. It's not just my saying. We say it, around the company. I've said it actually to the company, not so much last year, but the year before. I said to the whole company in a stand up, I said, if you don't love it here, you should definitely leave. Like, because this is going to be horrible. Like, what we have to do in the next year is going to be so hard that there'll be blood on the floor. Like, and so if you don't love everybody you work with, if you don't, come here, as driven by the challenge as Tina and I are, then go and we'll package you out. Nobody took the offer and nobody left. But I think it's true. Like complaining about the stress of running a startup is like complaining about the snow at the top of Mount Everest. It's one of the things I say to people. I say, don't join this because you think this is going to be an easy place to work. Growing at the kind of pace that we're growing at, and working with the sort of customers we work with is demanding, and we expect, well, you will see the people around you giving everything to what we do and to our customers. And so if you're not signed up for that, don't do it. Now, that doesn't mean working every single hour. It's not working ridiculous amount of hours, although there are people on our team who do that. And in fact, there's almost everybody on our team does that every once in a while. That's not the standard. The standard is putting everything of your intellectual power into doing what you do in a brilliant and complete way. And that's frankly, that's draining to do that all the time at the pace we're doing it. So we just tell people straight out, this is what it's going to be like. And if you don't want to do that, then don't join.
I think that's hard for people that haven't worked in a startup to empathize with, right? It's a different beast altogether.
Yeah, and it's basically like, what do you think? Like, you think it's easy being on an NFL team, right? Like that's what you have to think of it as. You're playing an elite sport. You need to constantly be improving yourself. You need to be constantly working at it, and being elite is hard work.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about go to market, and I want to start where you started, which is that you launched the product focused tightly on Salesforce oriented companies that needed, I guess, startups themselves that needed, or early stage companies that needed CPQ. So, how did you find that? Like, how did you land upon that focus? And how did that help you find product market fit quickly?
That was part of what Tina's audacious plan. I mean, if you think about it, the operating system of scale tech, not necessarily of startups, but of scale tech, is has historically been Salesforce CPQ into Zora, or sometimes one of the flavors of NetSuite related billing, right? There are some other versions of that, but that's where most of it is, right? And so we basically realized that we go after that market because even though that is a narrower part of the entire market, that's obviously a much bigger recurring revenue market outside of that. That piece is where the money is. As John Dillinger, the gangster, said, I rob banks because that's where the money is, right? If they kept the money somewhere else, I'd rob those places. So we went after it because we paradoxically thought that it was actually the softest place. But within that market, we then very, very tightly focused on the AI companies and their needs, because we understood that what was going to cause that market to shift was the future, not the past. If nothing was changing, people would probably go, I don't want to change my CPQ. I don't want to change my billing system. But because of what's about to happen, is happening right now, they don't really have a choice. They have to change it in some way. And so being the company that's furthest down with the most experience about what the future is going to run like is an incredible power.
So, is that, I mean, it's almost like a crossing the chasm kind of thing, right? So you're going where the early adopters want to go, and
Yeah,
you're gonna
exactly.
follow as adoption of different, or the newer consumption based or token pricing becomes more widespread. You'll already be pretty well versed in how to bring that into these companies.
Yeah, and of course, there's other companies who execute the same strategy that we are closely aligned with, particularly Metronome. I would say a very large footprint of our customers run both new and Metronome. Metronome is awesome at turning data into billable events. And there's a place where we overlap, where the contracting needs to inform the billing system, and Scott Woody and his partner James over there and their whole team, remarkable people. So we're not the only people who have been focusing on this problem. We just, again, focusing on the future seems like a pretty good strategy. I think it's a go to market today pick an existing market where the people are not moving very quickly and focus on what the future of that market looks like and build for that. And don't worry about supporting the people who are not going with the future. They will eventually come to you.
As a HubSpot partner for 13 years, I find it interesting that the AI companies are reliant on Salesforce. Just sort of it's like a little bit of a cognitive dissonance for me. Or are they on the edge of Salesforce implementation?
I think the reason is these are very complex businesses. Like, in other words, if you're selling an AI product to, like, I don't know, Bob's Bait and Tackle, maybe you don't need Salesforce, right? But if you're selling it to Boeing, you're going to have like complex, like imagine all the complexity we just talked about, and then imagine that you're actually selling master contracts across multiple divisions of a multinational company in multiple jurisdictions, and you have multiple different reps who are all working in different languages, possibly trying to service this thing. So we're just not focused. Like, we actually do have customers that are complete startups, but they're complete startups that are moving really quickly, that have really, really clear understanding of why they would need a system as complicated as Salesforce to run their business. And they use New to simplify and turn it into a business system they can operate. But the vast majority of our customers are like on their way to billions of dollars of revenue. Even if we get them at, like, I don't know, 30 million or something, they're still like bam, right? And so they understand the complexity that's coming.
I really thought that was very interesting about the reason why for a large scale CRM like Salesforce. I think it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I've never heard it said so simply. So thank you. That was really great. I want to go one more place and go to market. You have what you've described as a carpet bombing awareness strategy, where you've layered on things like Sirius Radio, along with LinkedIn and other ways to get your message to market. A little bit unconventional. Why is that working well for you and better than a traditional demand or lead gen model?
Because there's a tactical reason why you should adopt New and a strategic reason, right? And so the tactical reason gets you in the door, but a low value solution because people could think of different things. So say, for example, I need to quote this specific thing because my boss told me. That's tactical, right? And when you do that, you end up in a conversation about feature function that maybe isn't the best place to be, right? But the strategic reason is you need to get the systems that you're going to need to adapt your pricing now before you adapt your pricing, because if you don't, you won't be able to adapt your pricing and you're going to go bankrupt, right? That's a strategic conversation, right? And so it's easy to reach the decision makers. It's easy to reach the influencers and the RevOps people and the people who are charged with solving tactical problems. And by the way, I don't want to undersell this. I'm being simplifying because, of course, the people we're dealing with in the RevOps community understand the strategic implications of what they're doing. I don't want to but what we don't get to do in marketing normally is talk to the C-level people because they don't go on LinkedIn. They don't search for solutions on Google. We don't. The intent data we're seeing is not from them. So what we do is we use display advertising and radio advertising, as you talked about paradoxically, and some other things to wrap them in an awareness bubble that basically is explaining what we solve for companies, so that when somebody brings it forward as a suggestion, they're able to respond rather than "I've never heard of New, blah 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 blah." Isn't that the system that OpenAI uses and the system Anthropic uses? That's really interesting to me. Can you tell me how our problem is similar to their problem and why you think we should use this? And that happens imperfectly, but when it happens, it's very helpful.
I would say when it happens, it's perfect, right?
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
That's really awesome. I think what you're talking about is having a brand awareness strategy as well as solution awareness, right? And I think too few CEOs, so kudos to you, too few CEOs invest in the brand, and they're looking only at the KPIs that used to work really well. So, how many people filled out a form on my website, as opposed to how many people are influenced by our thinking or are becoming interested in the topic and our product as a result of our marketing. So,
Yeah, I think giving the credit to the CEO for this is again, it's like I'm the spokesperson and the head. We have an amazing team, and these strategies are constantly being built and innovated by people in our go-to-market and marketing teams that are basically constantly thinking about this, frankly, obsessing about it and doing an amazing job. I get to support their decision to invest in these areas, and definitely the Sirius Radio thing was my idea, but most of the ideas are coming actually from my team, and definitely the iteration of them is.
I just think it's really, I've been doing this a long time, and I've met more CEOs are less interested in the brand and its impact on go to market than you might hope. So maybe that's a great place to leave our episode, that thoughtful CEOs think about their brand, their go to market, their sales, their product. They have to think about it all, and they need a great team around them to make those things happen.
Definitely.
If people want to learn more about New and possibly reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, obviously, to learn more about New, you can either go to new.io or basically ask your favorite GPT, or I mean, ask your favorite large language model, that they know a lot about us. If you want to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. If I can help you, just reach out and just tell me exactly what you want. You may get a response from my EA, because my EA reads all my LinkedIn connection requests. But if you want to contact somebody in our company because you want to sell them something, sure, just tell me that, and I will try to be responsive and try to introduce you to the right person. And if you need advice or something like that, just tell me that too.
Fabulous. Appreciate that. Folks want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. My demand generation agency for software and AI companies is Austin Lawrence. We're at austinlawrence.com. If this episode didn't convince you to subscribe to the podcast, SaaS Backwards, I'm not sure what will, but please do so. And Mark Walker, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, Ken, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.